All right. So we will continue on, guys, with the sensation and perception that we've been working on. I feel like that screen's a little blurry, isn't it? Hopefully it gets better. This looks like it's a little out of focus. Okay, so anyways, so perception and vision, perceptual set, a way of perceiving the world that is based on your own personal experiences, right? So your own personal motivation, your emotions, the actual things you have experienced, you've seen, you've been a part of in your life. So a perceptual set is all these things you have experienced in your life that are going to impact your way of perceiving what's happening in the world, right? So for example, they use the hashtag, right? The pound sign, hashtag sign. So when you guys see that, you probably think hashtag, right? But when your parents see it or your grandparents see it, they probably think the pound sign, or they probably think, back when they had to, use that on like an actual home phone, right? Telephone, you had to hit pound and a number or whatever it might be. And that's just perceptual set, right? So for the younger, the more modern generation, it's a hashtag, right? That's its most common use. But for the older generation, it's that pound sign, right? Or number sign. And again, perception, where, and I guess it's kind of a bad example, but where if your parents see it or your grandparents see like a middle finger, right? They know what that means, right? And that's harsh. That's an insult. That's offensive. Whereas, sometimes I see, high school kids use that to their best friend all the time, right? And it's just, it still has that meaning, but it's not as offensive, right? It's not as serious. And again, that's just perceptual set. That's your own unique, subjective perception of the world. So what we perceive is not always what we sense. That was something the AP Psych guy kind of says, throughout the lesson. What we perceive is not always what we sense. So again, some people might sense that middle finger as offensive. Or you see that, you sense that with your vision, that middle finger, but some of us might perceive that to be offensive and some of us might not. So what we always sense isn't what we always perceive. Review real quick, bottom up processing. Remember, that is the small details. You perceive those, you pay attention to small details before you pay attention to the overall picture, right? So bottom up processing, typically with younger kids, we tend to perceive starting with smaller elements, smaller aspects, and then you build up to the whole. And again, anything the baby sees for the first time, right? They don't understand, they don't perceive what that object is. They're just concerned with the smaller parts of that, right? The opposite would be top-down processing, where you pay attention to the whole rather than the individual parts. So as you turn 16 and you get that first car, right, your new car, you aren't concerned with all these individual parts. You're more like, oh my gosh, I just got a Honda Odyssey or whatever it might be. So we form perception starting with large concepts, large ideas, and then we work down to the smaller ideas or elements. So have you ever heard someone kind of refer to themselves as a big picture person, right? That is top-down process. They see the big picture and then they figure out how to work down, how to make all these small details work. And your brain, you use it every day, top-down processing. But you guys remember that the picture I put up in class, and some of you guys might have seen it in Jimmy John's, where it's got like 2 paragraphs, and according to a Cambridge study, blah, 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 and every single word is misspelled. Your brain still processes that because your brain is using top-down processing. Your brain is seeing the whole before it sees these small details, right? So your brain is still able to read every single one of those words, even though they're all misspelled, every single one of them. Excuse me. And that's just top-down processing. Again, what you see, what you hear is not what you perceive. So what you see or what I see can be perceived differently based on who we are, right? So it's unique, it's individual perception. Okay, so we're gonna get in some constancy, constancy, constancy stuff here. Constancy just means unchanged, right? It is not changing, it is staying constant. It is the power of the brain to do that, right? So perceptual constancy, it's a phenomenon in which basically whatever we're looking at, its size, its shape, its color is unchanged no matter the different conditions, right? So a baseball is always going to be the same size, your vehicle, your car is always going to be the same size, no matter the light or no matter how far it is, right? So you still understand that baseball is still the same size, or that volleyball, no matter how fast or slow it's coming at you, it's still the same size, right? So phenomenon in which an object appears unchanged despite variations in stimulus or external conditions, right? So the size, the shape, the color doesn't change, no matter how fast it is or how far away it is, or if it's really light out or if it's not as light out, right? It's kind of dark out. So size constancy, the ability to perceive an object for being its real size, despite the fact that it might change depending on distance, right? So, again, a vehicle far away is the same size. Your brain perceives its size constancy. Your brain perceives it's still a regular minivan, even though it's 400 meters away. And as it's getting closer and closer, it might appear, right, like it's getting bigger, but your brain knows it's not. Somebody walking down the hallway, if they're at the far end of the hallway, right, they might look a lot smaller, but you still understand that person, whoever, let's say Grant Collins, that person's still 5'10" or whatever Grant is, right? That you understand there is size constancy, right? Color constancy, again, a volleyball is white, right? No matter if you're in North Max gym or our gym or Rochester's gym or Williamsville's gym, they might have different kind of lights or, different dimness. You understand that volleyball is still the same color, right? So tendency to perceive a familiar object as having the same color even under different conditions of light, right? So even if it's a little lighter, even if it's a little darker, if you're familiar with that object, you still know what color it is, right? So again, coming down to a baseball, we'll just say Drew Washam, right? So Drew Washam knows whether he is playing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or if he's playing under the lights at 7 p.m., he understands that baseball is still the same color, right? Shape constancy, again, same thing. We understand the shape doesn't change, right? So the definition, object is perceived as having the same shape when varied at different angles. So again, no matter if you're playing football, right, in PE or just with friends, or you're on the football team, no matter what angle that ball is coming to you, or you're about to kick it, or you're about to throw or catch it, no matter what angle you're seeing it, you understand it's still that oval shape, right? It's still that football shape. Plates, right? It doesn't matter what angle you go to see a plate from, in the kitchen, in the cabinet, in the sink, you understand it's still that same shape, right? Cups, the same kind of thing, right? So no matter the angle, as long as you're familiar with the object, even what you're seeing, that it might appear like it's a different shape, a different color, a different size, your brain is still perceiving, right? So what we sense isn't always what we perceive, and it all comes down to constancy. And the last one is brightness. Again, we perceive familiar objects at the same brightness, even under different conditions of light. So when you have notebook paper, right, that brightness doesn't change. Whether you're in a dark room or a well-lit room, the brightness of that paper doesn't change. Your brain understands that, even though it might appear a little brighter in a more dark room, right? That's not the case. Bed sheets would be another one. Whether you're making it in the morning or you're going to bed, the brightness doesn't change. Inattentional blindness. So failure to notice something easily noticeable because your attention is somewhere else. Okay, so your inability to notice something in front of you, hearing something, whatever it might be. So it could be vision, it could be hearing, it could be touch. So inattentional blindness is just your failure to really notice that. Again, mostly it's going to be vision, but failure to notice that because your attention is simply somewhere else. Okay, so the best example, the easiest example, I think we did both of these January or February, but would be how many passes did the team in white make? Remember that video, right? So you are just supposed to catch how many passes the team in white makes. And there's a black team passing, there's a white team passing. What you don't notice is hopefully you guys all got it, the moonwalking bear going right across the middle of the screen, right? So it's there the whole time, but because your brain is focused somewhere else, even though that pass and those players in white jerseys are right next to the bear, you don't notice that, right? It's inattentional blindness. And then the other video, right, was solving the murder where the detective is in a room and he's asking the butler and the maid and the gardener, all these different people, what they know about the murder. And the whole time you are watching that conversation unfold and you're not noticing all these different changes in the room taking place, right? 20 some changes were taking place. All of us, myself included, we don't notice that because of inattentional blindness. Okay. See, subliminal perception, again, the brain can multitask, but it cannot multi-think. Again, so with like inattentional blindness, you don't notice that, but it's not without the realm of possibilities that subliminally you might have perceived that, right? You're maybe multitasking, but you're not multi-thinking. So it could be something in a song, right? It could be billboards that you pass. It could be something going across the screen real quick, in a movie. Subliminal perception. You're not consciously aware of that. You're not processing that consciously, but the brain is still perceiving it, right? So info being snuck into the brain without you being consciously aware of it, that's subliminal perception. The mere exposure effect. The more you see or hear something, the more likely you are to remember it, right? So the mere exposure effect, the more likely you see or hear something, the more likely you are to remember it. Again, it could be signs that you see, it could be billboards, it could be jingles that you hear, it could be advertisements. Even though you're not really paying attention to that billboard, even though you're not really paying attention to that ad that pops up on YouTube, consistently, even though you're not really paying attention to that, you might be annoyed by it. You might intentionally shift your attention elsewhere. There's still some kind of perception being played. And again, once you consciously make yourself aware of it, it makes much, much more sense, right? So even though you're not really paying attention to that radio, I don't know if there's radio commercials anymore, but the jingles, the radio, even though you're not paying attention to that, or a song your younger brother listens to or something like that, you might at some point find yourself singing along or find yourself humming that tune. And even though you weren't paying attention, that your brain was perceiving that, you prove that, by when you're bored, and that jingle comes on, knowing the words to it, right? Priming. So when you introduce one stimulus and it influences how you respond to subsequent ones, right? So priming. Maybe I should save this for the Zoom session tomorrow, right? But if I really, really wanted, Ali Frazee to say banana, right? And she doesn't know I want her to say banana, and I don't tell her that, but I start asking Ali, hey, what color on a stoplight means you should probably slow down? She would say yellow light, right? And then I would maybe say like, hey, do you know Coach Weber's oldest daughter? What's her name? She might say Anna, right? And hey, what's the animal? I might try to say monkey or ape or gorilla, something that eats bananas. And then it might in turn, hey, just what's the first fruit that pops to your head? And then boom, she says banana. Because I had her say yellow, or because I had her say Anna, or because I had her say monkey, or maybe if I had her use the word peel, right? So if I wanted Drew Washington to tell me the Chicago Bulls, right? I'm just going to bring up a basketball team, and I want it to be the Chicago Bulls. First off, I would start with, hey, have you been watching that Michael Jordan documentary? And maybe have a little conversation with him about that new Michael Jordan documentary. And then I might say something to him about, hey, when the whole quarantine thing is over, you guys should head up to Chicago, see the sights, Michigan Ave, Lakeshore Drive, whatever. And then, might say something to him, hey, what do you think the most common color apple is? You might say red. And then I was like, hey, give me the name of I don't know, any random NBA basketball team. And he's more likely to say Chicago Bulls, right? Because I primed him. That's it for today. Don't forget, we're meeting tomorrow, so Wednesday at 10:30. You guys shoot me an email, or most of you guys send an email, but shoot me an email if there's anything I need to know about calc. If you guys have a Zoom session for calc tomorrow, let me know, and we can end early. But I do have some notes here. I do have some updates for you, and some comments, observations to make. And I won't keep you guys too long, but I definitely want to answer any questions that you guys have. Want to check in, make sure you guys are staying up to date with the notes and the exam review. I know I've seen like Caroline pop in, Riser, Turner, maybe a couple other guys pop in on the AP exam as I've been Google slide AP exam review that I shared with you guys. Now I've seen some of you guys pop in. Your name has shown up on the screen as I've been logged in. So I'm glad that some of you guys are knocking that out. So make sure you do that. I'm still adding to it. There are some things I'm going to take away as well because they're not testing on units 8 and 9. But hopefully you guys are knocking that out. You're knocking these review videos out. And yep, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 10:30.